be asking a question shortly of the Minister for Veterans Affairs, and the Minister for Veterans Affairs knows that I'm very passionate about the issue of the care of our veterans. I have one of the largest veterans populations in my electorate of Fisher, and in fact when you combine Fisher, Fairfax and Wide Bay on the Sunshine Coast, we more than likely have one of the largest veteran populations. And why wouldn't you want to retire to the Sunshine Coast? But that's another question. Minister, I'll be asking you shortly a question about transition to civilian life from the military. And as the Minister knows, I've never served in the military, but I have spent a lot of time over the last 3.5 years in working closely with members of the ADF, and that's been in my role on the Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade Committee and also the Public Works Committee. And one of the common threads of concerns that come through in relation to the care and welfare of our veterans is this very issue of transition to civilian life, and how we as a government can make that transition all the better. Now, we know that transition to civilian life is very, very closely aligned to three issues, and they are one's physical health, one's mental health, and one's employment prospects. And those three issues are absolutely intertwined. Arguably, it's difficult to get a job if you're not physically well. It's difficult to get a job if you're not mentally well. And one of the things that really stick out to me, and I'm sure that the member for Herbert will back me up on this, is that when our ADF members are serving, they have a sense of mission. They have a sense of purpose. They have a sense of pride, both in the job they're doing and in themselves. And there's that sense of tribe. They belong to the unit, and the unit that they belong to is so very, very important to them. And when the time comes that they transition from military life to civilian life, they lose all of that. They lose all of that sense of purpose, mission and tribe, and in many ways they are thrust out into civilian life, and they lose those things that are important to us all. And whilst as I said, I've never served, I've spent time, a lot of time with members of the ADF, and thankfully to the Minister for Veterans Affairs for the work that he does in relation to the ADF parliamentary program. It's given me an opportunity, an insight that I would never have had otherwise, to see the life and the work that men and women of the ADF do, and to get a greater understanding of that sense of tribe. And it's given me a real insight as to what it must be like to transition. And whilst I'm not pretending for a second that I fully understand it, I've got a glimpse. And I know that on this side of the House we talk about the best form of a welfare is a job, but that applies to veterans as well. We have to provide and assist veterans, and we are doing some great work in this space, but there is always room for improvement. There's always room for improvement to enable our veterans to have the dignity of being gainfully employed and to use the skills that they've worked so hard to get in the ADF. So, we've got some work to do in relation to recognition of prior learning. I think what we need to understand very importantly is that not all veterans are broken. Yeah. And whilst it's important that we talk about mental health, we've got to encourage employers to take on these ADF members. Now, can the Minister please advise what the government is doing to improve employment outcomes for veterans when they transition to civilian life.
I thank